This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lance. I am now going to start saying you should like and subscribe to us on YouTube or on podcasts, because by the way, that tells people you think we're cool. Anyway, apparently you have to say that. People don't just do it by nature. Anyway, I am here on a special episode with three amazing authors from the Author Talk Network. I'm super excited. Woo! They're going to intro themselves. But let's talk about what we're drinking first so everybody can drink along. So I am continuing with our sponsor, Skunk Brothers Spirits Lightning, which is, oh my goodness, it basically is moonshine, but it's like honey moonshine. But I put it in, I'm doing it healthy. I put it in Simply Grapefruit. So it's Simply Grapefruit and Skunk Brothers Spirits White Lightning, which is, it's jarring. It's just jarring. It's amazing. But DWA10 is the coupon code. So going around, Sherry, what are you drinking?
I have a Cabernet by called Madalena. I went to a wine tasting dinner and it was paired with some food, and it's probably my favorite Cabernet I've ever had. If we have a chance later, I'll bring the bottle and show it to you. But it's called Madalena and it's a Cabernet and it is delicious. Sounds amazing. Meredith?
I am doing sangria because that's my summer go-to. So, because I have moonshiners in my book, I decided a ball jar was the best idea for drinking it.
Oh my God, I love it. CD, what are you drinking?
You would think I'd be drinking some wine or something very Italian, but I'm drinking instead Jameson whiskey in my Titanic glass because I love everything Titanic.
Oh my gosh, I love whiskey. I'm a big fan of the whiskey. Okay, we're going to start. I want you guys to introduce yourselves and what you write so people can get to know you. CD, do you mind going first?
Sure. I write women's fiction. I have 2 books out. One just was released last week called The Visitor. The first one's The Difference, that recently won 3 finalist awards in different contests. So I'm very excited. I write relatable stories, generally in the Italian American culture.
Very cool. Meredith, besides moonshine, which we've begun to go into.
Well, I write folklore-inspired fiction. So that could be multiple genres. I've done some historical fiction, some women's fiction that's not out yet. But my main series is contemporary fantasy. And it's all based on Scottish and Appalachian folklore. And it's a lot of fun. Very, very cool. Sherry?
I also write women's fiction, and my debut novel was called What's Left Untold. It's a USA Today bestseller, and it's a little bit different than some women's fiction because it's being referred to as a domestic noir, because it's got some dark elements, lots of twists, but a very controversial ending, which has made it a lot of fun to discuss with book clubs.
Very cool. Domestic noir. I think that is literally the first time I've ever heard that phrase, ever. Yeah. Yes. They just made it up for you. Wow. Okay, so you guys are part of Author Talk Network, which is a group of authors who've gotten together. And a huge part of that is sharing what you guys know with other authors, creating a huge community. Am I correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So let's talk about, which I think is amazing, by the way, this community, everybody should help everybody because, wow, writing is hard. So let's talk a little bit about what got you started to write a novel. And I'm going to pick on you first, Sherry. What made you decide to, I'm going to put out a novel and be a USA bestseller and do that?
Oh my gosh. It didn't start out being something I set out to do. My background is in journalism and aviation, and I spent the first 10 years of my career as a pilot, a flight instructor, and a corporate co-pilot. But after my kids were born, I had 3 kids in about 4 years.
Wow.
Well
done. Well done.
So I kind of went back to my journalism background and did a lot of, I know it's like, we need a drink on that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you said 3 kids in 4 years. I'm like, I need to drink on that. I'm going to do that.
Writing ended up being a great career to reinvest in after my kids were small, because I picked up a lot of freelance work. I could do it at my own schedule at night or when they were napping. And I was doing a lot of online writing. I wrote a fitness column for 10 years. And then at some point, I just thought it would be really awesome to write a book. I had a lot of ideas that started going through my head. And then when the inspiration for What's Left Untold hit, I was like, that's the idea. That's the story that I want to go with. But it took 11 years from that moment of inspiration to actually getting that book out in the world. So it was a very long process.
I was going to say, so it wasn't just like a little hop, skip, and a jump, and then you wrote a novel. What
No.
about now? Have you continued? Are you in book 2?
Yes, I am about to send book 2 to beta readers. So I'm hoping that that will be out in the world in a year or so. I guess it depends on how fast those publishing cogs are turning. But the tentative title right now is The Executive Club, and it is also women's fiction. So I do hope to have that out soon.
And how long did that one take you?
Not as long. I followed everyone's advice that said, as soon as you finish your first book, start your second book. So I did probably start writing that one in 2016, I guess. So it still took a while and it's still not out yet, but definitely a little bit better than 11 years as the first round. So hopefully it'll keep getting better with each go.
Very cool. Very cool. Yes. No. If you take 11 years to write every single novel, you'll get like what 6, 7 out done, and then yeah, no, not good. Okay, CD, what about you? So you just said your second novel just came out, right?
Yes.
What made
Last
you decide to write?
Much like Sherry's story, really, just an idea came to me. My background and still what I do in the day is I'm a mental health therapist. And so it was just a hobby. It just started on the side and it grew and grew and grew. And it took about 8 years for that first book, The Difference, to come out. And but the second one, much quicker. I wrote it in the fall of 2020 in 3 months, and then took a little bit of a break, and then edited and everything, and it released last week. So not too bad with that one.
Very cool. What about book 3 then, my friend? Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes, it's all planned out, but I haven't started writing it yet. I need a break. So I'm going to start, I need a big break, but I'm going to start in fall, I think, because something I think that a lot of people that aren't writers don't really know is, your book is out there, but you still have to do all the marketing, and you have to continuously, keep up with all the sites. I'm indie published, so I'm in complete control of all the working parts of it. And that's a lot of work. So doing that and getting everything set, and then we'll write again.
Very cool. Okay, Meredith, what about you, my dear?
I think I have always been a writer. Like my parents will tell you, even before I knew how to pick up a pencil, I would make up stories. And I mean, all through school, I wrote short stories and poems and things like that. So I always knew that I wanted to be a writer, but I think I let that, that inner critic, that inner hater that says you have to do all these other things first, speak to me for a little too long. And so I did the other things. Like I got married and had a mortgage and had 2 babies and all that stuff. And then I got laid off in 2008 on election day, I might add.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I had taken it off to volunteer, and they asked me to come into the office to lay me off, which was awesome. And my husband just said, why are you gonna, he's like, don't even bother looking for another job. Just don't do it. Stay home, do what you want to do. Do what you're passionate about. And
we're supportive.
I finally got back to writing the book that I started writing the year we got married. So
wow.
Yeah.
So when was that? When did your first book come out then?
The River Maiden actually came out 8 years ago. Last week on the 2nd was its book birthday. And since then there are 3 more in that series, and I'm working on book 5 right now.
Very, very cool. So, CD, you said you're independently published, and then Sherry, are you with a publisher?
Yes, Red Adept Publishing.
Very cool. And so Meredith, how are you published?
I am independently published as well.
Okay, I have to ask, what made you guys choose those journeys? And this time I'm going to start with you, Meredith. Why did you choose to go independent?
There were a couple of reasons. My books have a strong kind of Scottish component to them. And the first book, The River Maiden, was published the year that Outlander first came on TV. And I knew that the series was coming. So I wanted to make sure, and I had a feeling it was going to be big, but you know, with TV, you never know how long something's going to last, especially when it's a show that costs a lot to produce. So I wanted to kind of be able to ride that wave. And I decided that the traditional publishing, querying, waiting a year or two route was going to be too slow for me. So I decided that I needed to kind of get this out in the world faster than that. That was
Very
the big
cool
decision. And I like C said, I kind of like having, after doing 4 books, I kind of like having control of, you know, my schedule and the pricing and all of that. So.
And I think that's one of the benefits of self-publishing that, you know, I think you have to find the right way to publish, right? I talk to a ton of authors that go all different kinds of routes, but I think if you really want complete control over that book, no matter what, like nobody else is saying anything about the book, you are going to have to self-publish. That is just the way it is. It doesn't matter, because regardless if a publisher wants to back you up thoroughly, you could have different ideas than what a publisher, an editor, or a typesetter, or whatever. And I know a lot of people that had that in their personality, and so they went self-published because of that. Or they just didn't want to wait, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is I'm happy to take feedback. And I had a professional editor work on these with me, and he gave me great feedback. But my fear in going the traditional publishing route was that they were going to look at the fantasy elements and tell me that it needed to be young adult. And, you know, could I make my characters younger? And that's just not an option for these characters, and not something that I wanted to do. I think there's actually an underserved audience of adult women who like to read fantasy that has a bit of realism in it, and, you know, and deals with women's issues. And, you know, so I didn't want somebody to be like, okay, but can you rewrite it as young adult?
No, I agree completely. And please, if you're self-publishing, get an editor, get a professional editor, not your friend that edits, you know, that looks at your book, you know, like a real person that does this for a living and knows how to do that. I think that's important. What I meant more was the choices. Sometimes publishers, regardless of the type of publisher they are, and I know this being a publisher, there are some choices, and I've seen people like get obsessed with a cover that they want to put on the book. And I'm like, okay, but this book says it's this type of book, and you're trying to put this, you know, like covers and stuff like that. And, you know, I just have a lot of friends that self-publish too, like that have done it forever. And I think it's great, but you have to have the stamina and the finances to be able to self-publish, because a lot of people don't realize the cost to self-publish is a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think you also have to be willing to look at the market as it is and find a way to navigate it. And sometimes that means sacrificing some of the things that you might want, but you know, you have to be able to observe it and treat it like a business if you're going to be successful and do it for a long time.
Agreed. And I'm going to put this final one plug that I always say is, if you are paying to publish, unless you're self-publishing because you're doing stuff, if you're paying a publisher to publish, that is not a real publisher. That is a vanity press. I do not care what kind of makeup and outfit they have on. They are still a vanity press. Do not do it. Okay. CD, what about you? Your publishing journey? I just have to say that because I literally in the last 3 days have had 5 stories from people that basically ended up in vanity presses, but they just put different clothing instead of just being upfront and going, it's this. They're like, oh, you have to pay for this advertising, but you have to pay for it from these 5 people. And look, that's vanity press. Okay. So Cindy, tell me about your journey.
Yeah, I actually was with a small press at first for The Difference, and then we had to part ways. And I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I mean, it was already 8 years and I wanted this book out. So I turned it around in about 2 months. It was pretty much edited already and everything. And self-published and just started the journey. I couldn't wait any longer. So with the second one, I again just didn't really want to wait that long. I did query a tiny bit, but I said, nah, I'm just gonna do it myself. I have also really great editors, and I feel like even though I'm self-published, you have to do that to have a quality product. And then the third one, I'm gonna see, but I think I'll probably try to query for an agent. But it has to be a really special small press if I went directly to a small press. Probably will just go with an agent this next time.
Very cool. And Sherry, what made you decide to go the traditional route?
I knew going into it that I did not want to self-publish because I didn't feel like I knew enough about the industry. I wasn't sure that I had the tools I needed, the experience I needed. I'm not very tech savvy or social media savvy. So, and I think just for my own self-confidence, I wanted the validation of somebody besides myself as a first-time author have given me that confidence that they see something in this book too, that they were willing to go on the journey with me and bring my book into their publishing house. As I mentioned earlier, because of the content of the book, I had a lot of, when I started to query the book, I had a lot of agents and publishers come back and say they really liked the story, they liked the writing, they were happy for me to send any other future work that I had done, but they weren't sure the way my book ended would sit well with women's fiction audiences. Typical women's fiction readers are maybe looking for more of a, I always like people joke around and say my book would be a good Lifetime movie, not Hallmark, because it just doesn't wrap up in a very tidy way, and the characters make some questionable decisions. So I was looking for a publisher that liked my book as it was. I'm in the Women's Fiction Writers Association, and that was a huge turning point for me in my book because I entered it into the Rising Star contest for new authors. And out of 75 entries that year, it was chosen as one of 5 finalists. And one of the biggest benefits of that was then the manuscript was read by agents and publishers, and we got feedback. And so the biggest change to my book at that point was it started in chronological order, and it was suggested so that it wasn't starting out reading like young adult, that it be done in flashback format, because it follows my character from the age of 15 to 45. So there was a lot of very valuable feedback that there was too much of the book spent with the character as a teenager to market it well as women's fiction. So that was a whole year to rewrite the book from chronological to flashback, but I'm really glad I did. I think it serves the story much better. I think it's a much more dynamic read that way. But I just waited until I found the right publisher that believed in my story the way it was and actually liked the fact that it was different and a little controversial. And Red Adept was that publisher for me. It took 2 years of querying the book. And then after I signed, it took another 2 years before the book was released. But I do have an agent now as well. And so I'm not sure yet what path the second book is going to take, but I am excited to see what other opportunities might be ahead.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, 2 years to get it published as the lightning starts kicking in. I did have a question about reviews, but first I should ask, how did you guys get involved with the Author Talk Network? Let's start with you, CD. How did you get involved?
Grace Salmon, the leader, put a post on Facebook. I don't know what group, possibly a debut group, maybe 2020, 2021, probably 2020. And I just said, oh, mine's not out yet, but I'd love to keep talking to you about it. And then it just went from there. And I got very lucky because I'm pretty sure she accepted me in there before it was published and then was getting the group together.
Oh, that's very cool. Meredith, what about you?
Well, Grace and I, and now CD, are also tour guides for the Bookish road trip community. And so we, I knew Grace through that. And when she started, she sort of got this idea for Author Talk Network. All of the tour guides got included happily, because we've all read each other's books and we all kind of support each other. So
Very cool. Sherry, how'd you get involved?
I'll have to echo both of these two in saying that Grace was the one that really got me into this group as well. I love being part of WFWA, and the 2020 debuts group was awesome, but it was huge. Like we had like hundreds of authors debuting that year. And so I know coming out of it, I was looking for some other groups to get involved in, at least in the beginning, that were starting new or maybe starting a little smaller, so I could make connections a little better than trying to. It's really difficult to try to support hundreds and hundreds of authors, just all across different genres and everything. So I know when Grace first, introduced me to this group, I was happy to jump in on the beginning and find different ways to support other authors.
Very cool. Okay, I want to ask this question, then we're going to take a quick break. How did COVID affect your writing? And Sherry, I'll go back to you. How did COVID affect your writing? Because it, for a lot of us, we were like, okay, we need more time at home and we're going to write more and do this, which was not the effect that this particular thing necessarily had. So, Sherry, what about you? Was it easier to write, harder to write? Where did you end up with that?
This is sort of, for me, a little bit of a two-part question. I feel like I was more impacted by releasing my debut during COVID, because all of the in-person events that I thought I would be able to do, and even some of the ones that were already scheduled, had to be quickly some of them were canceled outright, some of them switched to a virtual format. And so that was a big pivot at an important time. And there were definitely pros and cons to that. But as far as how the pandemic itself affected my writing, I wouldn't say it affected me a lot, because I already pretty much work from home most of the time, and my children are a little bit older. So I really feel for the people that had young children and really needed to jump in there hands on and do virtual school with their kids, or even some parents had to make the choice to homeschool depending on their situation. So mine were all in high school, and it took a more of an emotional toll on everyone. And so I felt like there was that. But as far as me being able to find time and carve out time to write, I don't feel like I was affected that way with COVID.
Awesome. Meredith, what about you?
Oh gosh, I think it's still affecting me. Honestly, in 2019, I wrote a book and a half. Like Sherry was saying earlier, we keep trying to get faster at it, and better at it with each book. And I wrote a one manuscript. My goal was to write two. I almost got there. And so spring of 2020, I was going to finish book 4 of my series. And then and we went on, I took my kids on spring break, and they never went back to school. And so we ended up doing virtual school for the rest of that school year, and we did virtual school for the next school year as well. And which I think, like Sherry was saying, I think it takes an emotional toll. And for those of us who work at home, it's something to suddenly have all these people in our space. Yeah. It cuts down on your creative time when everybody's there and there's noise and you're worrying about the mental health of all the other people living in your house. And so that slowed things down. And then this year they went back to in-person school, and I think that slowed things down. I have one kid who started high school and went back to in-person school and is autistic. So it was a huge adjustment for him. And so a lot of my school year has just been kind of dealing with that. And my other one graduated this year. So a lot of it has just been, trying to write while balancing all of that. It's, it's a big challenge. So now they're out of school, and I'm hoping I can finish this manuscript this summer.
Very cool.
Before I have to drop the older one off at college.
Here you go. Whew. No.
Yeah.
See, what about you?
Actually, I don't have kids, so it wasn't a negative transition for me because I was able to finally work at home, and I drive 60 miles a day. So it is a significant life change when I have days to work at home, and that was every day then. So that's why I was able to knock this out in 3 months that year of 2020. But I think that now I know I can do it because I basically did it on weekends anyway. And so, just navigating the schedule a little bit better during the week and then stay consistent on the weekends. That's going to work for me, I think.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw something on LinkedIn today. I used to do HR officially as of June 3rd. I now publisher and writer full time, which is amazing. Finally got to that point of my journey, but I used to do HR, and there was an article on LinkedIn about from a gentleman or a whatever thing that he wrote about how much time he saved from commuting, like how much time he got back in his week. And it was something, one of the things he listed is like number of events missed, 0, like how much money and time, and it was astronomical how much money and time that you never used to think that you could not have to do.
My husband commutes 2 hours one way every day.
No.
He works in Washington, D.C., and he rides the train into work every day and home. So it's like 4 hours of his day. And sometimes he works on the train, but yeah, having him at home definitely improved his quality of life. He's really trying to push, his work to let them work from home more often.
Well, I think they should. As an HR person, for the record, everybody still maintain their productivity level. And if they don't, do the necessary steps, because somebody will maintain that productivity level to sit at home and not have to come in.
Well, he's a government contractor, so there are other factors involved too. But yeah.
I work for the state too, so it's very strict, but I am still working home a few days a week, and I will take it.
That's very cool. That's awesome. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and be right back with Drinking with Authors.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
So we're back. Let's talk a little bit about fans. I enjoy fans. So let's talk a little bit about our fan experience. CD, what was your fan experience?
I did a book signing in February, and someone came to see me. My mind
At a book signing?
And then that was something. And then a bookstagrammer that I had been talking to for a while, just typing. I was just so busy. I just voice messaged back, and she said, "I can't believe I just got a voice message from you, one of my favorite authors." It's like, what? It's just me. And it's in my head, I just thought that was amazing. So
Those authors all the time. Like the moment you publish a book, you're a celebrity. How big your celebrity gets depends on how much you do with it. But I think a lot of, especially authors, tend to be like, but it's just a thing I do. And I'm so happy you showed up. Like people I've watched at conventions and stuff where they'll walk past the booth and I'm like, hi. And when you make eye contact, they're like, they talk to me, And I'm like, yeah, we're humans, we do that. But you're a celebrity. Somebody's going to enjoy your book and want to come out and meet you. You got a little fangirl moment. I like fangirl moments.
It was
amazing. What about you, Meredith?
Well, I am really lucky that I have a group of kind of fan/friends. Like we met through books, and they read my books very early on after meeting them, and they just come to they usually live in Virginia or Maryland, and they just come to whatever events I have here. But I think the most the most surprising fan experience I had after the first book, and I mean, I've had 3 out since then, but after the first book, I went to the season 2 premiere for Outlander, and and we were all exiting, and there was just this crush of people, and we all had name tags on, and I just had my first name, and I think maybe my last initial or something, and this woman bumped into me. And she's like, "Oh, excuse me." And then she looked at my name tag and she's like, "Are you Meredith Stoddard?" And I'm like, yes. And she just grabbed my arm and she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited." And she's like, "I had a dream about Dermot and Sarah, who are the main characters in my series." And she's like, "They're going to go to France." And I was like, oh, are they? Okay. She's like, "That's what my dream said." Awesome.
Oh.
And funnily enough, I'm writing book 5 starts in France, but not because she told me that.
Uber fan coming through.
Yeah, I know. She's gonna feel pretty chuffed when she sees that. But I still talk to her occasionally now, but those moments are like magic, because you don't realize that this piece of yourself that you've thrown out into the world is actually reaching some people and they're getting excited about it. So it's always awesome.
I agree 1000%. What about you, Sherry?
I think I'm still sitting here with my heart palpitating when you throw out these words about like fans and celebrities, because it's it kind of like just strikes fear into my heart, because I'm not I still don't think of it that way myself. I'm kind of a private person, and it still doesn't strike me that, I guess because I wrote the column for the newspaper for a long time, it's more of a local paper. I've had the experience of people recognizing me locally from that column, but the thing that makes me the happiest about having the book in the world is when somebody does have those kind words to say that they enjoyed it, or they related to a certain part, or my absolute favorite thing of the whole journey has been meeting with book clubs and really getting able to meet one-on-one in a more kind of an intimate setting and talk about the book, and having them feel comfortable to say really what they think, the things they love, the things they didn't love. It just helps me feel like I grow more as an author and connecting that way with readers. I think I've always just looked at it as feeling very fortunate to have people who support me rather than feeling like they're fans. I guess just friends and family and fellow authors and new readers that have just been so supportive, whether it's been leaving a positive review or saying kind things, or hosting me on a podcast or something like that, or inviting me to their book club. That's just what makes me feel really good. And I feel like I get to be part of that experience and share the experience with them, rather than, I guess, feeling like thinking of myself as like a celebrity or having fans.
Well, you are, and wait till the fan, I call it fan girl, but it could be any gendered person, comes running up and is so excited.
Oh my
you should
gosh.
just prepare yourself for that, because that eventually does happen. I was in the middle of a lecture when mine happened. I was teaching people something, and I write under 2 names, and she literally turned and was like, "Are you Dahlia Lance?" And I'm like, "Yes." And then I was continuing, and she's like, "Oh my God!" And just went into a whole thing. And I was like, "Oh, this is awkward. I'm in the middle of, there's people. Thank you." It's great, but it does eventually, you've hit somebody in the right place that will happen, because they get excited and think your character should go, to France or something like that. But let's talk about the reviews side. So Sherry, do you read your reviews?
Not anymore so much. I know there's so many people that have advised not to read the reviews, and I appreciate that, because I do believe that once the book went out into the world, it really wasn't my book anymore. It was the reader's book, and I had no more control really on what happened at that point. I mean, I have some control in terms of marketing it, or still trying to get it out into the view, but what people think of it or say about it is not in my control. And I think, as with most things, some people will love it. Some people will hate it. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I appreciate constructive criticism, I guess, but there are people out there that are just mean and just say hurtful things that aren't really necessary or helpful, maybe. I would never do that, I think, to anybody else. So I don't know what motivates people to do that. But so I try to like, I realized that my skin was not as thick as I thought it was, or as I hoped it was in the beginning, but I've gotten a lot better about that. And I have fortunately to have far more positive reviews and positive things being said. And I just try to look at those and remember that I never expected everybody in the world to love this book. I knew, especially with the controversial ending, that it wouldn't be for everybody, and some people would not like that and would express that. So I don't read them regularly. If I see a positive one, I definitely read that, but I don't scour through them on a regular basis. And if I see one that's not a positive one, then I just usually tend to try to skip over that. So
No, I think that's a smart thing to do. No book is going to be for everybody. And like one of the advices that I've heard said a lot is if you wonder what this is really like, go pick whoever your favorite big name author is and go, like, for instance, The Hunger Games, go look up and just sort for the 1-star reviews on Amazon for The Hunger Games. And it just gives you an idea of perspective, what people think. But there, you see that so much in life. Like, most people are way more apt to give a negative review than they are to give a positive review of things. Like anytime anybody approaches me and is like, oh, I really liked your book, blah, 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 conversation, I always go, oh, did you leave a review? Because that would be awesome if you did. I don't do it that way. I'm very pleasant about it, but I always go, could you leave a review? That would be great. Because, if that whole thing about people are way more apt to leave negative things than positive things, that's going to be true with books and just things in general. And people, always, when you're behind the computer, you're the, expert on whatever it is you're talking about in that moment, which you may not be an expert on, but they think they are, And when I got my first negative review, it was very funny. I actually considered it like a badge of honor. I'm dying to do a panel where somebody stands up and talks about something they don't like in my book, so I can go, I just want to thank you for buying my book.
It means your sample size is large enough, right? You've reached enough people that you're not talking about friends and family anymore. That there are enough people who bought your book that you found somebody who didn't like it. That's good.
Exactly. And that happens. So Meredith, what about you with reviews? You've been published the longest. How did that go from when you first got published, which kind of the journey to now we're in book 5?
Yeah, I mean, I do read my reviews. I think my previous career was as a corporate trainer and instructional designer, and we always had to get like class feedback after every, training class that we did. So I got used to reading reviews and from that and learning what you can take from it and what your outliers are, and that's the key. I think if you're going to read your reviews, that's fine. If you notice a pattern in those negative reviews, then that might be something you want to look at to improve. But if it's like a one-off or something like that, forget it. Don't worry about it. Some will, some won't. So what? But some of them can actually be juice for marketing. Like my favorite is I got one on the River Maiden that said, oh, another romance. And I'm thinking, first of all, it's not a romance because you need a happy ending for that. But but I love that they're like complaining about, this love story in their fantasy book. And I feel like that's something that I could actually, use for marketing purposes to say, hey, we got fantasy here, but there's also a love story at the middle of it. So.
Yeah. And I think it's true. There's critique information and then there's criticism information.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference. Like if you're going to not get your book edited or not do stuff or use spell check, for instance, you're opening yourself up if it's stuff that actually needs to be addressed, to your point. But when it's just like, I didn't like it and I hate kissing, Cool. But
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for reading. Thanks for buying my book.
Book 4 has kind of a controversial ending too for people who actually care about these characters. So I think I had a few people who were a little bit mad about the ending of book 4, but yeah. But I had already told them, I was like, look, it's not the end, I promise. There's more to come. So
yeah, no, totally. And to your point of the fan coming up and saying France, they start creating these characters in their minds, and especially in series-based writing, they get invested. You make a choice that they're like, should have ended up with, Edward versus Jacob, and just horrible.
Or they do
analogy.
fan
Like
casting.
You can get a war going with your fans. Okay, CD, what about you? Reviews, do you love them? Where do we stand?
I don't read them usually. It's been hard in this last week because I'm still making sure that some of my ARC people have left reviews for this new book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to look. Okay. I don't want to see anything else but like my ARC people, and I have no idea what they're gonna say even. But yeah, I don't really want to look, but Meredith's making me think, so I don't know if I'll change my mind. You had some good points. And I think having someone, if you don't want to look, having someone to look for you and pull out some good lines is a good method. And I'm probably going to employ that at some point.
Also spoilers, because sometimes people will put spoilers in their reviews, and if they're people that you can be like, hey, I really appreciate you writing that review, but could you remove that one sentence, because it's kind of spoilery.
Those are my favorite reviews, when they literally do the entire plot of the book in their review on Amazon. I especially love it when they don't put spoiler. I'm a firm believer, if it's more than about 2 paragraphs of any sort of review for a book, 1 paragraph is perfect for me. 2 paragraphs I'll accept. Beyond that, get off the computer, people. Just leave the stars. We don't need, who needs like a 5-page review on something? It's no.
What I think is hilarious, my friend did this one time when we were sitting around drinking, and he started reading my reviews, and he's like, they said this is the best book ever. It's spectacular. I love this. 4 stars. Like, great. Love it. 4 stars. Like,
so
or people who will rate it and not leave a review. Like, here's a 1 star. I'm not going to tell you why.
Right.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine, and I've said this on the podcast before, because it's my favorite analogy ever for reviews. He found this review for this restaurant, and they said the food was great, the service was amazing, the lime in my Moscow Mule was not as fresh, 1 star.
What?
He found this on Yelp. He told me about it, and I was like, this is the perfect
I have to
analogy.
assume that folks like that don't know how the review system works. Like, they maybe think 1 star is better.
No, I don't think that was the thought, but that's why one thing you when it comes to reviews, again, it is hard, especially when you've taken and you put so much heart and soul into something. It's kind of like if somebody you were a painter and you hung up a painting, and somebody walked up and was like, I don't like this one. It's not for them, but you can't help but almost feeling wounded that they didn't, like your painting. But I think it really just depends on how you utilize the feedback. Have you guys been at in-person events? I mean, like where you did a book signing, CD. Meredith, I'm assuming before you were in in-person events, yes?
Yes,
And
I have done
Sherry,
them.
have you been to an in-person event yet?
Yes.
Where you're signing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So you guys know that people can walk up to you and say weird stuff too. It doesn't just have to be, you know what I mean? And give you their philosophy on your stuff, especially as you reach a broader and broader audience. It's just science that the percentage of crazy people goes up, for the number of fans you have. Like, a lot of people don't realize it, but I used to say, if you have 5% crazy at 100, that's only 5 people. That's kind of manageable. But 1,000, that's 50 people. That's not 50 crazy people. It's not as manageable. Like, oh. So you're going to have that, but then you're also going to have all the fans that just are absolutely waiting for that next book to come out. Do you guys put your books on pre-order?
I did, to get a link.
Yeah, I do. But I wait until it's ready, like until I'm like in the final stages. Like I'll put it on for 2 weeks to a month, but not until I'm sure it's ready. Like I'm not one of those authors that puts it out like 6 months before.
I'll tell you, 3 month is the sweet spot. I'm just letting you know.
3 months, huh?
Order 3 month is the sweet spot for pre-orders and ranking jumps.
Wow.
I don't know why. This is just a little tidbit takeaway magic ball. 3 months. 3
Okay.
months is not too long for the person to completely forget that they did this, but it's also enough time to ramp up. So you skyrocket up that list on the day your thing is released.
Good to know.
Well, a lot of people don't. It's pre-orders. Pre-orders are wonderful. They're awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your guys' writing environments. And I'm going to start with you, CV. What is your writing environment like?
Well, the room I'm in right now I'm on a desk and I could close a door. So this is great. I wrote basically the first one here in 2 houses, but same desk. And then I have an art room that I created, and that one's all open. So if there's not too much noise going on, or if it's something that I can tune out, I'll write in there. And that's really where I wrote The Visitor, the second book.
So do you have music?
No, I can't work with music. Editing is fine for either spa music or just like new age music or something with, definitely without lyrics. But I'm such a musical person that I would be singing the songs I want to play or something.
Can you write around other people? Like, can you go to a cafe and write?
I don't think so. I'm a extreme introvert. I don't think that would work for me. I'd be probably self-conscious. I'd be like, are they looking at me? What's happening? Too distracted by the noises. I can't. Yeah.
What about you, Meredith?
I have a shed in my backyard. This is where I am now.
Is it a she shed? It's a she shed.
Yep, it is. And we built it right before the plague hit. So literally like January and February of 2020. So just in time. This is, I do a lot of things here. So a lot of businessy things. Sometimes I still go out to cafes to write because I can get away from, any of the distractions of like, oh, I need to send that email or, do this other thing. But yeah, I love my shed, and I built a garden in between the house and the shed. So I have a very nice walk to work.
Nice.
Very cool. Sure. Oh, wait, music. Do you listen to music?
Well, my main character is an ethnomusicologist, so I kind of have to. But I make playlists for different relationships, different, moods and characters and stuff like that. So yeah, I listen to music a lot.
Do you post those playlists?
I do, actually. Yeah, I have. They're on Spotify. So I usually, when the book is released, if it's a new playlist for that book, I'll usually share it on Spotify.
That's very, very cool. What about you, Sherry?
My writing environment changes seasonally, I think. In the summer, I like to sit outside. I've got this great table on my back deck with an umbrella. And so I'll put that umbrella up and sit outside in the shade. And I love to be outside. And in the winter, I'm usually at my desk with a candle and a cup of coffee. And that's really important. The coffee is key. I don't think I write without coffee ever. And I do go to a cafe sometimes, but I have to sort of know I've tried it out. I can't, if it's noisy, if there's loud conversation, if there's kids yelling, I cannot write at all. I did write almost my whole first book with classical piano. music. I did like having music, but like CD said, it can't have lyrics. It could be acoustic, it could be new age, but classical piano was my favorite for writing my book. And I do have a playlist. So speaking of music, I have a whole fun 80s playlist. Every song on my playlist on Spotify was directly referenced in the book, or the group was alluded to, or it ties in with a theme. Like I think it was Bonnie Raitt, Let's Give Them Something to Talk About, just because I thought that really played into the controversy with my book. So, but yeah, so I can have music without lyrics, and I just need to find a space of time that is a few hours long without interruption. So if I have that, then I'm usually good.
Very cool. Okay. So because we don't do rapid fire with this one, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions though that we ask. Normally we're much drunker by this point, so we're going to wing it. CD, what is your favorite book of all time?
The Great Gatsby.
Why?
I read it in 9th grade. It was the first book that I actually liked, really, in school. And something about that time period always sucks me in. I just think it would have been so much fun to live in that time period. And then don't even get me started on when my favorite actor, Leonardo DiCaprio, starred in the movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even talk about it. I'm so excited. I love it.
Wow. Okay, Sherry, what about you? Favorite book of all time?
Oh gosh, I was dreading that question. I was hoping I'd get a different one. I don't know how you can pick just one. I think it's like just like I have seasons for writing, I have seasons for reading at different phases in my life.
Is there any book that you reread more frequently?
No, there are so many books that I want to read that I don't feel like I have the luxury to go back and reread one, because there's always another one I want to read that I haven't yet. I can't ever get through my to be read
So
list.
favorite recent book then? You're not getting out of answering this question, by the way. I know.
Okay.
It's
So
my podcast.
my
That's how I know
favorite
that.
more recent book was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I really love her. She's kind of one of my idols in the women's fiction genre. And that book I just really loved. I thought it's about a family that's homesteading in Alaska in the 70s. And I love the outdoors, and her description of the wilderness and the wild, untamed world that was Alaska in 1970s was just really awesome. And her characters were really powerful. And it was at a time when I was working on my own women's fiction craft. So I really, of all of her books that she's done, that one was my favorite. And probably one of my favorite compliments I ever got was someone that read What's Left Untold, said it reminded them of Firefly Lane, which was one of Kristen Hanna's early books. So I really liked that one a lot.
Very cool. Okay, Meredith, favorite book?
Yeah, I'm with Sherry on this one. It's really hard to pick one book. I mean, there's so many. But I'm gonna say the last book in the Lyman Chronicles, which I think is the 6th book, Checkmate. If you have not read Dorothy Dunnet, she's amazing, and that book is that whole series is just awesome. It's like James Bond without the gadgets in the Elizabethan era.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
Like now that we've went out there with just our one, like what I meant by about the seasons, I think reading Stephen King in middle school is what made me want to write eventually and become an author. It's what made me a reader. I've read Carrie Cujo and Christine in quick succession. It was like my jump from the P.S. I love you kind of more teeny young adult books into like real fiction. And then I think we get so busy as students with school and college that reading for pleasure kind of gets lost. But in college, we had to read The Silence of the Lambs for one of our classes. And that's what made me realize how much I missed reading for pleasure. So that's when I meant like, I can point to different books, The Kite Runner, The Pillars of the Earth were like really powerful books. And I loved Outlander because I felt like, I have a zoologist, Diana Gabaldon, who's writing this book that was like the blend of everything. It was fantasy, it was historical fiction, it was romance, it was, it was just everything. So there's like different books for different reasons. I think it's why it's so hard to pick just one.
Very cool. Well, I agree. I agree. We all have stacks of books that are yet unread. Some of them are digitally and nobody can see them. And then there are other stacks that people can see. And the boyfriend's like, how about we don't have more books suddenly? So I just buy them on the Kindle. That's he's like, you're not reading them. You got 5 stacks. And I'm like, no, I am. Okay, so this is a fun one. If you could be any character, but you have to live their life, who would you be? Meredith, you're going to go under the
Character of
spotlight.
ours or any character?
Any character in any book, but you have to have their life.
Oh, wow.
That's harsh. Ooh.
That's really hard.
Well, the characters wouldn't have gotten to where they are if they didn't have their life. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at my bookshelf.
What's that?
I'm looking at my books.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, do I choose excitement or do I choose what I think would be, better for me? And I can't even remember the character's name. What was in The Winter Sea, Susanna Kearsley's book, the main character there, she's a writer and she just goes and like lives in the places where she's writing a book about. So like she goes to, Scotland and lives there for a bit, writes a book, moves on to France or wherever. Yeah, I think that sounds like my speed.
yeah. Okay, CD, what about you?
I love Sophie Kinsella's The Shopaholic series and her main character, Becky Bloomwood. The last name, it's like she got married. I can't remember which is the married name. Anyway, I just think she's hilarious and she's lived in all these different cities and she has a fabulous life. I think it'd be fun to be her.
Very good. Sherry?
Oof. Okay, I would love to think of a character that's like traveling all around the world and like, but I can't off the top of my head. So I'm going back to Outlander, which is going to be a bold choice because, that Sassenach, the character Claire leaves her life and goes back to, ends up in Scotland, 1700 something Scotland. And that has to be a lot of hardship, but I'm going to go with that because I love history. And I often like see an old house or something and wish I could be a fly on the wall or live a moment of time in that exact moment of history. Like I wish I could experience what that was like. And so if you could pick I know she didn't get to pick, she stumbled through those stones and ended where she did, but to be able to go back in time and actually experience that. And then because she did have a choice later to make the choice to give up what would have been her modern conveniences to go back to a harder way to live, but she did it for love, to be able to make that choice to give up the life she had to follow her true love. I mean, that would be amazing to be able to do that. So I'm going with that. I'm going to be Claire in Outlander.
I like it. Okay. This is a fun one. What is your favorite book to movie or TV show? One that you think they're never going to get the book 100%, but you were happy knowing the book to the TV show or movie. CD?
The Devil Wears Prada. I love that movie and the book was just okay to me. And so I
don't disagree with you. I actually saw the movie before I read the book and I did not like the character, the lead, I liked her much better in the movie than I did in the book.
Sorry, guys, I'm having computer issues. My battery is running low. So if I drop out, that's why.
That's okay. Then answer real quick, Meredith. What is your favorite book to movie or TV show?
I'm going to get real specific and say season 2 of Outlander. Season 1 was okay, or pretty good. Season 2 was amazing. And I don't even like that is not my least favorite book of that series. But yeah, season 2 of Outlander was amazing. They sort of went downhill till season 4 and then season 5 picks up again, getting better. But I'm kind of a super fan when it goes to Outlander. So
you went to a premiere. I feel that. That. What about you, Sherry?
Yeah, that would be an easy answer because I'm still getting together with friends and watching Outlander. But I'm gonna diversify my answer a little bit here and go with either either The Hunger Games or The Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale is very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Hunger Games. Hunger Games is one of my favorites. Okay, so Meredith, before you land, we have to wrap up. So I want you to do shameless self-promotion. I'm gonna let you go first just in case you drop.
Oh, okay, awesome. It's the Once and Future series. The first book is The River Maiden. If you're into ebooks, it's only 99 cents where most ebooks are sold. But it is all about a folklorist who goes to trace a song that her grandmother taught her when she was a little girl. And in doing so, ends up uncovering a lot of family drama and gets mixed up with some 20th century neo-Jacobites and all kinds of mysterious things.
Wow, and how do people find you? You have a website, newsletter, I'm hoping, yes?
Yes, I am at meredithstoddard.com. I'm MR Stoddard on Instagram and TikTok, and also on Twitter. So
Very, very cool. CD, what about you?
Yes, The Difference is about a woman who feels very empty, misses her grandfather, who was an Italian immigrant. She goes on an ancestry mission to find out why he was so secretive about his past. Meanwhile, trying to help herself not be falling into depression and trying to help her relationship with her boyfriend that's falling apart. The Visitor, released last week, is set in New Orleans. A new age store owner is threatened with destruction of her business by her high school nemesis ex-boyfriend. And she needs help from a mystical customer and also needs to learn to trust her community and accept help from other people.
Very cool. And website and stuff?
Yes, cdangeloauthor.com. And I'm on all the social media platforms I can think of. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of it.
Very cool. Sherry.
Okay. My USA Today bestseller, What's Left Untold, warns that every secret has its price. And it's about a woman who reunites with her estranged best friend and uncovers a devastating secret that threatens to destroy the life she's built with her husband and daughters. So
cool.
It has some surprise twists, a controversial ending, and it's written in flashback format. It follows the character Anna, the main character Anna, from the age of 15 to 45. So it spans 30 years in her life. The book is mostly set in Maryland, but they do have a couple field trips. I'd say cameo to Ohio, Gulf Shores, Alabama. Trying to think if they go anywhere else, but all within the US. I am on social media. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not too super tech savvy. I do try to keep my website up to date as much as I can. It's sherrylimecooler.com, but I am more active on social media. I have a Facebook author page and I'm also on Instagram. I do have Twitter. I'm not as active on that. So I really enjoy connecting with readers on Facebook, through my website, and through Instagram.
Very, very cool. It has been amazing having this episode with you guys. You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Yes. And I will reach out to see if you want to do individual episodes. We can have even more fun. Shots. Just kidding. We don't have to do shots. We can.
Cheers,
so
for sure.
it's an option. It's an option.
Cheers to you. Thank you.
Guys, cheers to
Thank you
Eric
so
having
much.
us.
Okay, guys, this is already coming in. Woo, lightning. This has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. My guests have been from the Author Talk Network, which is amazing. And we'll, of course, share all their information on the socials. Our sponsor today is Skunk Brothers Spirits. DWA10 is the coupon code. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye.